What is completely harmless but also terrifying as fuck? Apparently there are people who are afraid of moths. My wife is afraid of moths and we looked into it once why people are afraid of them. One theory is people fear moths because they move erratically. Since you can't predict where it is going, your brain starts screaming, "Get the fuck away from that thing." They're furry and I don't like it. Y'all got any fucking lamps? Seaweed touching your foot at the beach. I had a fish swim between my thighs once. It was so freaky. Small fish that brush past you when you swim in lakes and the ocean. Nightmares. But then I wake up and slowly remember that nothing is more frightening than my terrible life. The ability of THC to suppress dreaming is one reason cannabis is often recommended for PTSD patients. Nightmares, in excess, can cause a person real harm. I once fell out of bed because of a dream. Saw myself in the current situation I am, then woke up, looked at the ceiling and saw a thick, giant spider web. I instantly jumped out of my bed. It was uncontrollable, but luckily nothing bad happened. I can't explain it better. Watching videos of people free climbing buildings. Sweatypalm says hello. Watching Free Solo. My friend and I made this inside joke that we reference once in a while. We joked that the guy climbing behind Honold on a practice run all of the sudden was like, "Hey, this is what it would look like if you fell," and just unclipped himself and fell down striking the rocks. Any insects that jump. I got 2 words for you. Camel. Crickets. Thinking about the future. Yay, lately I've been thinking about when will be the next major impact from a large meteor or comet happens. Not if, but when, and why we aren't working towards a defense for it. We can, but it doesn't seem to be a priority. People who have extensive doll collections. Every nook and cranny there's a doll staring at you. I do not like being in their house, at all. Said harmless. In middle school I had this girlfriend that I used to walk home every day. I still remember the first time ever stepping foot in her room. Barbies everywhere. Even as a horny little middle school boy it was hard for me to be in that room. Had a big 100+ lb. German Shepherd when I was younger. Terrifying if you didn't know him, but he was a giant teddy bear who would sulk behind furniture if he thought you didn't like him, or were being mean. Poor boy sad face. I had a female Rottweiler who was a big old tank but loved to cuddle and adored little kids. Weighed about 130 and it took a bit of getting used to when walking her, especially if she got excited. No way you're holding that beast back. She never hurt anyone though, even though it looked like we had a black bear on a leash. Lol. I have a 130 lb. Saint Bernard. Big deep bark, gets chased off by the cats and is afraid of baby gates. Public speaking. I dropped out of university purely to avoid taking a public speaking class. I had, and still have, a stutter which firmly determined what I did and did not want to do while growing up. I always dreaded public speaking, but I still did it despite apprehension and people laughing at me. One minor act by a friend who I doubt remembers it still helps me 30 years later. Now that I'm much older, I've been in numerous positions where I have to talk in front of groups, and refusing to do so just isn't an option. I still dislike it and will avoid it when I can, but public speaking isn't something you can hide from forever. Even if it isn't in a formal "I'm giving a speech" setting, you're still most likely going to do a lot of it your entire life. Sleep paralysis. I don't know if it's completely harmless, but I used to experience it and I wasn't harmed. Just terrified. Yep. Came here to say this. First time it happened it was terrifying. Happened in college, could hear my roommates in the other room watching TV, but I couldn't move or anything. Now it's happened enough that it doesn't really scare me, just annoys me. Sleep paralysis is likely to happen to everyone at least once. It's a miscommunication in the brain where one part of the brain is in awake mode and the part that sends signals to your muscles is in sleep mode. Fun fact, depending on where you are brought up, your sleep paralysis monster is different. In the UK it's usually someone sat still at the bottom of your bed or somewhere in the room, whereas in the US it's more likely something approaching you to attack you. Edit wording. Public service announcement, hold your breath. It triggers the sleep apnea response and wakes you up. Needles. Just can't get over them. I know it only hurts for a sec and is probably in my best interest. I'm much the same. I'm absolutely phobic even though I know they don't really hurt that much and are doing me good. There have been times I've passed out and even thrown up from psyching myself up about them too much. When you hear a sound at 3 a.m. in your house. There was a loud thump in the night, like a body hitting the ground the other night in my apartment that knocked out the power and woke my so and I up. Freaked us both the fuck out. Talking to my crush, I guess. I'm just terrified of saying something dumb or inappropriate. Those dreams where you wake up from falling. If it helps you to know, your brain locks down your body so you don't act out your dreams physically. The feeling of falling is entering and coming out of this. Hopefully you'll have less panic knowing this is why it is happening. Being left alone with my thoughts for too long. I think everyone has this problem these days, that's why we try to keep our minds occupied with other things constantly. Like video games, and in my case, sucking dicks. Certain snakes. I'm rather friendly. Night terrors. Sleep paralysis. You wake up and see a fucking monster sitting on your chest and staring at you or just crawling slowly across the room to you. You try to escape, only to realize that you're paralyzed. It's more realistic than any dream you've ever had, and you can't wake up. Because you are awake. Yeah, fun. Edit, fixed name, sorry about that. Night terrors are a different, also very scary, thing. My son had them when he was younger and they are really scary. He would be screaming and shouting and running around his room, screaming, "Help me." We couldn't snap him out of it and the pediatrician said just to wait it out, so we would watch him do that for 5 minutes and then he would eventually yawn, crawl back in bed and go to sleep. He wouldn't remember a thing the next day. Babies. I've had friends that want me to hold their newborns and I've always said no because I am afraid I will do something not good like drop them or something. One time I saw a guy drop his kid off his shoulders in IKEA and I've never been the same. Darkness. Not being able to breathe through your nose. You know those big green beetles that fly into everything during the summer. Completely harmless. But huge and look scary AF. Cicadas. They're huge in the Midwest. IIRC, every 17 years the gestation periods align and millions of those fat lil noise makers swarm. It's not too bad if you live somewhat far from forests or natural areas, but it can be brutal if you do. They are fat, unbelievable dumb things that look freaky but are 100% harmless and vital to the ecosystem. They also can die super easily, so if you see one tipped over on its back and making a bunch of noise, be a bro and help the lil dude turn himself over. Edit, so this got some attention, so I quickly googled it. They're called 17-year cicadas, there's also a 13-year. From my limited googling, BC I don't really care that much, looks like they kinda sleep and then emerge every 17 or 13 years, get super noisy, fuck like rabbits, then die. They kinda hibernate, waking up so often to get food and do things, but most of those years is spent in this state called torpor. Neat. Power going off randomly during a storm. There are all kinds of situations where this could be the very opposite of completely harmless, I would think. The sound of a balloon when it pops. It scares the ever-living fuck out of me every time. Thinking about our inevitable death as humans. I don't think death is a bad thing, at least there are far more harmful and painful things living than death itself. However, to the untrained mind, it can be terrifying as f lol. The ocean. Swimming in it won't hurt you. Until you go under the surface and look straight down. Furries? Honestly, in my head I think it's weird, but also I feel bad for judging like that. It's the same logic that some people use to defend LGBT+ communities. If it brings someone happiness and doesn't hurt anybody else beyond just not getting it, there's no reason to stigmatize it. If you do, it'll probably cause more problems than it'll solve. I just wish there weren't so many bad examples in the furry community at the same time. Driving. A little painted line on the road and some basic rules is all that separates you from death or extreme injury. Driving on an empty road at night with the headlights off. Though my assessment may be slightly off on the harmless bit. Have you ever seen a basking shark? Those things scare the shit out of me, but are harmless unless you're a tiny fish. My mom's sandals of justice.